Do Russians like Putin? Russian here. There is a strong minority who hate him for obvious reasons. There is a not-so-strong minority who love him or like him. As always in Russia, and maybe elsewhere, there are people who love whoever is in charge because it's authority and you can't argue with authority. Older people, on average, like him more than younger people. Despite trying to project an image of an energetic leader, Putin, 71, can't connect with 20-year-olds. He's been in power for almost 25 years. There are people who were born when he was president. Some of them have already been killed in Ukraine. The majority do not really care. It's like the weather, you just adjust your plans and tolerate it. Unless you are willing to become an oppositionist and risk your career and even your life. Russians cannot change their president now. Since 2022 Russia is a full-fledged autocracy. Putin doesn't even pretend to be a democratic leader who protects the rule of law. His legitimacy is now that of a wartime leader. Some do, some don't. Some like him, because he presents himself like someone to be liked. Others do not like him, because they know how he really is, but they mostly stay silent about it because they do not want to be punished for voicing negative opinions about him. As a Russian living in Russia, it's really hard to tell for sure. Those who don't like him keep their mouths shut, as any protest attempt or public posts criticizing the government are very dangerous, and only the few bravest ones, or most desperate ones, dare to speak. On the contrary, you people in Kremlin bots are very loud and constantly shove their opinions down to everyone's throats to keep the impression that they are majority now. Any public polls out there are as reliable as our elections, i.e. I wouldn't trust it and you shouldn't either. Putin is doing a good job of keeping us scared to prevent the Gorbachev scenario and at the same time keeping economy afloat to prevent the Ceausescu scenario. Most of his detractors have left Russia for anywhere else to avoid conscription. This was called Putin's true victory by many, enough to keep him on. Sure, he's autocratic, but Russians have always been, so people cope with it. Also, previous presidents were alcoholic train wrecks, so seemingly strong president inspires simple people. Are you asking Americans? The ones who like him usually forget everything he said a year or two ago. If, like most people I know in the UK, they dislike their leaders and think them ineffectual, why should Russians be any different? I am Russian, and I don't like him. Me, I'm 36 and all my friends hate him. My family is Russian and has lived in Germany for quite some time. Let's just say that family gatherings always end up in a heated debate about him. Especially when that one uncle is drunk again. I'm looking at you, Uncle Sasha. Keep your hands off the beer, and just drink one shot of vodka, not 7. The elections are rigged, but the conventional wisdom is Putin would win comfortably regardless. Russians like a strong man. Majority do. Younger generation is definitely no. There was a Russian girl in my town. I didn't know her that well. She went out with a friend of mine for a bit. But she ended up without a place to stay, bouncing around between people's couches, and I felt a bit sorry for her, so I said she could stay with me for a bit. One night when we were both a bit pissed, I asked her about Putin. It's worth noting that she had lived in Western Europe for a number of years at this point and wasn't shut away with no access to Western media. She told me that the Russians love Putin because he saved us from the Russian mafia. I then asked her about the old Salisbury poisonings and all that polonium business, and she burst into tears and shouted at me that it never happened. Why would I say something like that? It wasn't true. Of course they love him. He has that IT factor, where IT is total control of the media, police force and the legal system. Russian. No, we don't like him. But we can't vote him out either. The man's been in power for over 25 years. What do you think, Limfa? Historically, Russians tend to pick an authoritative strong man and keep going with him till he collapses the country.